It's been 24 hours and more hours with you. I spent a weekend getting better. Oh. We spent the late nights making things right between sets. But now it's all good, sir. All the problems and voices, sir. Combinations out of arrangement of objects when I can solve. I need a like you. An ordered selection of our elements out of object where it can be reused. Yeah. It is repetition. Yeah. KKR multi-set permutation with limitation. To the whole day I'll arrange our elements. Out of n objects, trying to make things right between us. Now it's all good, guys. We can pass comp sci. This great math.
Hi everyone! We are here today to talk about the different learnings we have in ComSci 57. So first, I'm going to talk about the basics of counting. So, we all know that basics of counting has 4 main rules. These are the sum rule, the product rule, subtraction rule, and the division rule. So first, let's talk about the sum rule. So in sum rule, if event A has n possible outcomes and event B has m possible outcomes, where A and B have no outcomes in common, then the total outcomes for A and B is simply m plus n. So next, let's discuss about the product rule. So the product rule applies when a procedure is made up of separate tasks. Suppose that a procedure can be broken down into 2 sequences of 2 tasks. If there are n sub 1 ways to do the first task, and for each of these ways of doing the first task, there are n sub 2 ways to do the second task, then there are n sub 1 times n sub 2 ways to do the procedure. Next to be discussed is the subtraction rule. So subtraction rule is also known as the principle of inclusion and exclusion. Why? So let's find out. So in subtraction rule, if a task can be done in either n sub 1 ways or n sub 2 ways, then the number of ways to do the task is n sub 1 plus n sub 2 minus the number of ways to do the task that are common to the 2 different ways. So, and lastly, we have the division rule. So in division rule, there are n over d ways to do a task if it can be done using a procedure that can be carried out in n ways. And for every way w, exactly d of the n ways correspond to way w.
In probability theory, an expected value is the theoretical mean value of a numerical experiment over many repetitions of the experiment. Expected value is the measure of central tendency, a value for which the result will tend to. When a probability distribution is normal, a plurality of the outcomes will be close to the expected value. Any given random variable contains a wealth of information. It can have many possible outcomes, and each outcome could have different likelihood. The expected value is a way to summarize all this information in a single numerical value. For example, the expected value in rolling on the 6-sided die is 3.5, because the average of all numbers that come up is 3.5, as the number of rows approaches infinity.
Hi everyone, in this part of the video, we will talk about isomorphic graphs or graph isomorphism. Suppose that we have 2 graphs, namely graph 1 and graph 2, and to find out if they are isomorphic, there should be one-to-one correspondence between their vertices and edges such that incidence relationship is preserved. In addition, a property preserved by isomorphism of graphs is called a graph invariant. For example, isomorphic graphs must have first, the same number of vertices, second, the same number of edges, and third, the degrees of the vertices in the 2 graphs must be the same. If any of these differ in 2 simple graphs, the graphs are simply non-isomorphic. If they are the same for 2 simple graphs, then it does not necessarily mean that the graphs are isomorphic. So, given these 2 graphs, let us show that these graphs are isomorphic. Given this graph 1 and graph 2, we need to check if they have the same number of vertices. Next, let us check if they have the same number of edges, and lastly, we have to check if the degree of the vertices in the 2 graphs must be the same. Using the conditions to check for the isomorphism of the graph, we can say that both graphs have the same number of vertices and edges, as well as they have equal number of vertices with the same degree. Therefore, we can say that graph 1 and graph 2 are isomorphic.
Let's proceed to graph coloring. Graph coloring is an assignment of labels called colors to the vertices of a graph such that no two adjacent vertices share the same color. The minimal number of colors for which such an assignment is possible is called chromatic number, denoted as xg, which means the chromatic number of a graph G. There are two examples of graph coloring. These are the vertex coloring and the edge coloring. The vertex coloring is an assignment of labels or colors to each vertex of a graph, such that no edge connects two identically colored vertices. While the edge coloring is the coloring of the edges of such that adjacent edges or the edges bounding different regions should receive different colors. Let's answer the two problems. So for number 1, we need to color the graph using the vertex coloring. As you can see, we have the graph G. Graph G composes of 5 different vertices, labeled as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The first step to do in using the vertex coloring is to assign any color to a vertex. Let's say we assign color blue to vertex 1. Then we proceed to vertex 2. But as you can see, vertex 1 and 2 share the same edge, which means we can assign blue to vertex 2. So let's pick another color. Let's say green. Then we proceed to vertex 3. As you can see, vertex 3 and 2 share the same edge, which means we can assign color green to vertex 3. But we can repeat the color that we already used as long as the two vertices that shares an edge are not on the same color. So we can put blue on vertex 3. Then we proceed to vertex 4. Here, we can see that the vertex 4 and 1 and the vertex 4 and 3 share the same edges, which means we can assign blue, but it could be green. Lastly, for the vertex 5, we can see that the vertex 5 shares the same edges to the other vertices, which means we can put a color blue or green to it. So we need to assign another different color. Let's say violet. So as you can see, we can conclude that the graph G has the chromatic number 3 because we only used 3 colors. Let's proceed to number 2. It states that we need to color the graph using the edge coloring. As you can see, we have the graph A. So the first step to do is to assign a color to an edge. Let's say we put color blue to the edge of vertex 1 and 2. And then, we proceed to the next edge, which is the edge of vertex 1 and 3. But as you can see, we can't put color blue since vertex 1 has already an edge with a color blue. So let's pick another color. Let's say red. Then, we proceed to the next edge, which is the edge of vertex 2 and 3. But as you can see, vertex 2 cannot longer have an edge with a color blue, and vertex 3 cannot longer have an edge with a color red. So we need to assign another color. Let's say yellow. Then, we proceed to the last edge, which is the edge of vertex 3 and 4. But as you can see, vertex 3 cannot longer have an edge with a color of red and yellow, so we put the color blue to it. So in conclusion, the graph A has a chromatic number of 3, since we only use 3 colors, which are
What is the chance? Likely outcomes. What will happen? That's probability. When you toss a coin, there's 2 outcomes. Heads or tails, 2 possibilities. Every outcomes are not similar. Multiple possibilities. Why don't you roll up a die? What are the chances? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. Those are the outcomes. And when you